There are many people in Austin who are homeless throughout the year, but there are many creative ministries going on with and for people who are homeless. That's what we talk about today on Austin Faith Dialogue. Stay with us.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
We're glad you've joined us today on Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Sandy Wilder, your host, and today as we talk about ministries for and with people who are homeless, we have two guests. First, Christy Baird with the Homeless Commission of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. Welcome, Christy.
Welcome.
And John McPherson, you are a homeless advocate and an artist. It's good to have you too.
Thank you.
Let us first talk about what the Homeless Commission is so that people know the organization we're talking about. So Christy, describe where it is you work and what you do.
Okay, well, I work for Austin Metropolitan Ministries, and the Homeless Commission is one of the groups that AMM sponsors. We have several different programs underneath us. Medical transportation, we're responsible for the cold weather shelters in Austin. Also the Homeless Artists Guild, the Children's Artists Guild, and we have a new program, it's called the Speakers Bureau, where we actually go out into churches and talk on homelessness, about homelessness and what's going on in the city.
And your particular role in the Homeless Commission is?
I'm actually the program coordinator, and I'm responsible for getting volunteers and getting dates and all that kind of stuff, setting up the cold weather shelters, making sure that we have food, we have volunteers, we have places that shelters can open.
Tell us a little bit before we go on into some more work and get to John here, how you got here, because you're not a native of Austin, right?
No, I'm not. I'm actually from Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm here for a year with a program called VES, Volunteers for Educational and Social Services. And they place volunteers within Texas, and that's how I got to Austin. I'm really glad to be here, and I've had an exciting 6 months, and I still have 6 months left. So
I bet it has been quite a time.
Yes, it has.
Now, John, you're not on the staff of the Homeless Commission, are you? So what's your relationship?
Well, I spent the past 2 years out on the streets as being a homeless person, trying to find out what remedies there are and what solutions there are and how I can turn around and help other people because I'm partially disabled. And I keep on running into various programs and getting asked to go out and help co-facilitate and assist in various programs. So that's where I sit, and that's what I've been doing, as well as being an artist.
And I imagine there are several different organizations for homeless needs in Austin. How did you get hooked up with this particular one?
Well, I'm actually involved in a lot of them through City Action Network, and I wound up having the need for the cold weather shelters, and I wound up being able to assist in a lot of small ways that turn around and add up, and it makes the homeless people feel more comfortable that there is one of them that's actually out there facilitating for them.
Exactly. I wonder if it makes a difference for you that this particular organization for the homeless, this Homeless Commission, comes out of a spiritual base. Does that make any difference in the way you see the work being done?
No, because I turn around and have a spiritual base behind me and work very well along with them. I enjoy the work, and I go to various churches, to various church groups at times. Most of the assistance for the homeless are church-based anyways. Caritas is one example. This one just happens to have 140-some churches underneath it, so it's one of the larger based on religion.
True. People of faith really are those who support those who are hurting, whether they're homeless or whatever. Let's talk a little bit for a while about the artist work under the umbrella of the Homeless Commission, because my impression is that that is a particular unique kind of ministry. Do you know, Christy, how that work got started?
Actually, it got started last year with a VISTA volunteer named Joshua Nobe, and he had a particular interest in art and had heard about other organizations in Seattle and different places throughout the country, and thought, wouldn't it be a great idea to start it up here in Austin? And that's how it really got started. He just went out and collected donations and got people motivated, and actually just, built it up from the bottom. There was a previous program in Austin called Art from the Streets, and it's still ongoing, which also helped him, get his idea started and going and things like that. But right now it's in one church in particular, University United Methodist, sponsors our art guild, and it's just taken off from there.
So the idea then is to work with people who are homeless but who also have some artistic talent and give them the opportunity to use their talent?
Sure. Most people are artists that do come to the art guild are, have wonderful talents, as you'll see in some of the work. But also we hope that people that aren't, quote, artists will come as well. People that just, want to spend a few hours doing something where they're not walking the streets, or they're not out in the elements or whatever, and just spend a few hours with us, and we hope that they join us too.
And John, since you have worked with these artists and you yourself are an artist, maybe you can talk us through the series of paintings that we've got to show here. We've got about 7. I think we can say 4 of them now and 3 of them in the next half of the show. So what can you tell us about the person who did this painting?
This is an elderly single woman that came to Austin a couple years ago to live with her extended family. She's currently trying to raise 3 of her grandchildren, and she's running into some personal turmoils. She can't get around very well. She has to call up for the taxi service that Capital Metro provides. And she loves to utilize religious themes, religious stories in whatever she does.
That really shows. This is such strong imagery.
And she actually traces, she goes through different art books or different coloring books and takes pieces, like she'll take a cross from one or a tree from one and try to kind of duplicate what she has seen, and just put them all together in one artwork. So it's amazing.
And we've got a second one here, and when it gets up on the screen, maybe you can tell us a little bit there.
Well, that's one of my own pieces that the city has such a broad music base that I turned around and decided, well, let's turn around and go back into the history of music and music making. And so I turned around and put a couple different types of flutes together, and tortoise drum and hollow log drum out of my own imagination, and created them. One was a quick sketch of something that I saw, one of the flutes, what I saw on one of the buses going on up to Saturday lunch.
So you weren't actually looking at these objects in front of you, but doing them from memory?
From memory, pretty much, from knowledge of the basic construction of some of the prehistoric musical instruments.
Very nice work. Thank you, John. And let's take a look at the third one here.
This piece is done by another section of the Homeless Artists Guild. Maybe Christy might like to elaborate on it, because I don't really know those people.
It's actually from some homeless youth, and we actually don't know who the artist was. They have donated the piece to us after they did it, and that's a lot of times we'll get artwork that way. They'll just do a sketch or do a drawing and leave it, and then that's how we come to find it. So that's the story for this piece.
Quite a gift. And obviously that person has a great deal of artistic talent.
Definitely.
Okay, and then we've got one more for this part of the show.
That's another one of my own pieces. I wanted to try to get the feeling of just plain drawing a helix. And so I did that, and then just filled the background in with different plant material that I knew from memory, and went ahead with it.
I'm intrigued. What were you trying to show in this one?
I guess the helix is an ongoing thing without real ends. And it was just the feeling of giving it a circular depth and pattern to the piece of artwork, and I just felt that an orange rind would do the trick nicely.
It does. Thank you. We have some more, but we'll get to them in the second part of the show. Some really fine pieces here. What happens to them?
Well, actually, we just had a show at the beginning of February at the Artplex, which is sponsored by the Artists Coalition of Austin. And we show the work, and when people buy it, all of the proceeds go straight back to the artists, unless, in the case of that one piece, we don't know who the artist is, and then it goes to the AMM Homeless Artists Guild to buy more, pieces of mat board or whatever. So.
And are you actually there working with the artists, or is it you, John, who's there on site for this work?
Christy tries to be there. I've just, since the beginning of it, I saw Joshua Nobe, I turned around and saw a couple of the other facilitators, and I more or less pushed myself and put myself into a position of being a leader. And
because I'm wondering, as you're there working with the people doing their artwork, what the conversation is about. Are people talking about just the ins and outs of life, or are they really getting reflective?
Some people go very reflective, some people get upset. It gives them a chance to show their emotions. It gives them a time to turn around and talk to other people where they really don't know which way the conversation's going to go or lead. It gives them a chance to learn how to mix colors and do some blending and learn some my art skills if they so desire through micro tutorials. It gives them a chance to play. We have about 3 people that come on back at the end of lunch and start playing the piano on a regular basis. So it's more than just art. It's a time to let yourself loose, time to express yourself. It gets some of the people away from their chronic addiction to alcohol and drugs, and it gives them a break from the street life, which can be very rough, and it can be a lot of hostilities and friction between the lay people as well as our police department as well as others.
It really does sound like ministry in the best sense, and we'll come back in the second half of the show and talk more about the ministry of the Homeless Commission. It's been so good to have you, and so everybody stay with us for the second half of Austin Faith Dialogue. Don't go anywhere. We're glad you've joined us for the second half of Austin Faith Dialogue, when we're talking about the work of the Homeless Commission related to Austin Metropolitan Ministries. And our guests are Christy Baird, who directs the Homeless Commission, and John McPherson, who's a homeless advocate and an artist. And John, when we ended the first half, we were talking about the work of the artists who come and do their paintings and all. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you see this whole creative process as doing for people, doing for humanity.
Creativity is part of us as human beings. The desire to create and please others is constantly there. And this gives people the release to be able to do exactly that. A chance to give them a feeling of self-worth. Chance to express themselves however they so desire. Expression of the self is part of the interface of mankind too. So we give them an opportunity. And to me, it's a wonderful experience.
And I can see how people's spirituality was almost coming out in the artwork, even when a piece wasn't specifically about a religious subject.
There's spirituality in everything that anybody does.
You're right.
And it shows more so, and it shows the type of spirituality of which a person believes in. Mm-hmm. And it's a very gratifying experience seeing all this work in action.
And we'll get back to some more artwork here in just a minute. But Christy, talk a little bit more about some of the other projects of the Homeless Commission, particularly if there's a really exciting, growing area you wanted to tell everybody about.
Well, right now, the Speakers Bureau seems to be just really exciting. It's just now getting kicked off since November, and we've had several speaking engagements, and one of our most fun engagements, I guess, was this past weekend, where we went to Faith United Methodist Church, and it was a youth outing. They had a lock out instead of a lock in, and the kids actually had the experience of what it might feel like to be homeless for a night. Certainly it doesn't even come close, but they spent the night outside, and it was about 40 degrees, so it was rather chilly. And the police came and woke them up at 2:30 in the morning to prove the point that you're not allowed to camp in Austin. So they were asked to come back in, and we had a shelter sort of set up inside of the church, and they had several different activities where they got to speak with John and also with some other people on what goes on if you're homeless, what happens. They actually got some criminal trespassing charges too for like going in the building, in different buildings and things like that. So it was a really unique experience for the kids. And they got to see that it's not all fun and games, and it's not just people hanging out on street corners or hanging out down on 6th Street panhandling or whatever, that it really is a rough life, and it's not fun.
But it's going to make a difference for those kids, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. It was a very exciting program.
And so your role was to arrange all that, to help all that to happen?
Yes, Gary Taylor is one of their youth leaders, and he came up with the idea, and he came up and said, hey, you know, you came and spoke to us a few weeks ago, and we'd really like to know what more we can do, and here's my idea, and can you help us plan it? And so our role was really, I got John to come out and speak. We arranged for the police to come out, and we arranged for a few other activities throughout the night. And so it was really interesting, and to see some of the kids going, gosh, it's really cold out here, and for us to have to remind them that the cold weather shelters weren't even open. So it wasn't cold enough for a shelter to open for the homeless. But, you know, so they really got to experience the feel of what it's like when it's 42 degrees and you have to spend the night outside.
It's going to make a difference for those kids.
Oh, yeah.
And Christy, I wonder what it was that drew you to this kind of work, because not everybody chooses to work in ministry to begin with, nor in ministry to the homeless. So what's the pull for you?
Well, actually, I started working with homeless when I was in 10th grade, and it was just a minor, you know, little once-a-week kind of a deal where I went and tutored homeless kids, and I really got addicted. I saw a lot of bright faces and a lot of hope in eyes, but they weren't really getting what they needed as kids. They weren't getting the services they needed, or their moms were so busy, you know, searching for work or trying to provide a place for them to live, that sometimes the kids got left, you know, as a second kind of a priority. And so it really drew me in. And from there, I started working with women and children. And then from there, I came to Austin and things like that. So it's a unique experience. And everyone should, you know, go out to a homeless shelter and see what it's really like. Because these people are people. And they have, you know, feelings and needs. And a lot of their stories are just sometimes unimaginable for us. So that was really my draw, my pull.
And you're only here in Austin for a year. So I wonder what's going to happen next. Where do you see this pull taking you?
Well, actually, I'm looking at some more volunteer positions in Austin as well as in Atlanta. And so I'm not really sure, but I will still be working with the homeless in some form. So that's really, it's still one of my life goals, I suppose, to work with the homeless. So
A calling,
a
probably.
calling, yes, it's definitely a calling.
John, part of your calling seems to be to express yourself through artwork. And we still have 3 more paintings to show to illustrate how other people are expressing themselves, other folks who happen to be homeless. So here's the next one in the series. Tell us a little bit about the artist.
This one's created by Patricia Pardo, and he utilizes a rather unusual technique of first putting down soft pastel onto the paper and then going on over it and creating various things. She worked, from what I understand, as a secretary until she got a back injury or secretary's assistant. She's Hispanic American, and she's got a wonderful sense with her work of utilizing brilliant colors for backgrounds, mutating them with her painting, and coming up with a lot of these houses and some other very brilliant colored patterns.
A striking piece.
She does fairly well with her artwork. Not quite to professional state, but at least it gives her occasional additional spending money. She's doing her best to help her daughter out with her children.
I like the story. Thank you. And the next one here.
This one is produced by a lady in her early 20s. I think Christy might know a little bit more about her. It was a piece from United Methodist Church.
The girl's name is Escadar, actually, and she has quite an unusual story. She's a youth, a street youth, and she ended up on the streets after a dispute with her mother, and she was in search of her dad, who was in Atlanta, and kind of Austin was a stopping place for her until she could get there. And actually, we've heard from her since she's been in Atlanta, and she has found work, and she's working as a nanny, and so she's kind of a success story.
Okay, thank you. And I think this is the last one in our series.
This one is produced by a severely disabled person with multiple disabilities, from his limbs being different sizes from birth defects. He's mute. He's got cerebral palsy, and he works primarily with one hand. He chooses to live on the streets rather than to live in a group home because he finds the nightmares that can happen in a group home are worse than the streets, and it ties up his capacity to be free at all. And so he prefers the streets, and we have him in 2 of our art programs, the one over at University United, as well as the Art from the Streets.
Okay, and actually I was wrong. There is one more here in the series. So who is the artist here?
This one I do not know. I saw the piece being done. She came in one day and she's never returned to do another piece.
And that sometimes happens. We have, a soul or someone who just comes in to stop off and do a painting and then just leaves it for us and leaves.
So left with the mystery then.
Yes.
What's the story behind this? Wouldn't that be nice to know? Well, we talked a little bit with Christy about calling. I wonder what you see your calling to be, John.
I believe it's just to be doing what I'm doing right now, facilitating and assisting other people for this time while I'm awaiting they'll okay and go ahead to get back into school. And I would find it rather interesting and a lot of fun to be helping out in the capacities that I'm helping out as from computer lab facilitator, offering micro tutorials through the arts, finding people who can't even read or write and getting them into something like Reading is Fundamental for adults, and various other programs that are out there, just trying to steer them a little bit so that they can get the help that they need.
I would call you a minister in the truest sense of that, someone who is there and makes himself available for the needs of others. Is there something a message you would like to be sure to give to the people in their churches and synagogues and houses of worship who happen to be watching, something from your experience you'd want them to be sure to know?
Well, I think the last weekend was a lot of fun working with that Praise United Methodist Church, and a very important message that Christy put out was that it's not fun being out there. It's not fun being homeless. The homeless are not out there as a real thing where it's a matter of their own personal choice. But there are other choices that were involved in their situations. Mm-hmm. And we all have needs. And psychological needs are one of the basic fundamental needs. Art is a way of expressing it.
So all of us can be in ministry somehow to people who are homeless, mm-hmm. who in effect are us. Yes. And Christy, we have a couple more minutes. Is there some message that you would like to be sure to get out?
Definitely. I think it's such an important goal for the Homeless Commission and for us to get out and say, look, there's people on our streets. We're in such a wealthy community that there's people out on our streets who aren't doing as well as we are. Why is this? A lot of times they've been laid off, or they have some problem that has put them out there on the street. And we need to, as a faith community, realize that whatever our spiritual base is, that it is our calling to help those in need, to help those people that need a help, that need a step up or whatever. And just to get out there and to see what's going on, to volunteer.
Which reminds me that for those of us who are Christian, the person we follow was homeless.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Christy and John, for being here and talking about the creative work of the Homeless Commission. And let's hope lots of volunteers call you up to help out. Thank you, too, for joining us this week on Austin Faith Dialogue. And we'll see you here again next week on KNVA with Austin Faith Dialogue.